Support comes from Seattle Rep, presenting the return of The Play That Goes Wrong, back by popular demand this June. This award-winning comedy follows the Cornley Drama Society as their production unravels with missed cues, collapsed scenery, and onstage mishaps. Performances begin June 11th on the Bagley Wright stage. Tickets and information at seattlerep.org.
You know, every day on Up First, NPR's Golden Globe-nominated morning news podcast, we bring you three essential stories. At the heart of each story are questions. What really happened? What really mattered? What happens next? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious and to follow the facts. Follow Up First wherever you get your podcasts and start your day knowing what matters and why.
Hi, welcome to Meet Me Here, your weekly guide to arts and culture worth leaving your house for. I'm Jeannie Yandel, and local arts organizations here in Seattle have seen around 250 layoffs since October. That's according to Seattle Times arts economy reporter Margo Vansynghel. Now, compared to the bigger layoff numbers we're seeing out of larger companies here, that may not seem like a lot. But local arts organizations have never employed as many people as Microsoft or Amazon. And a lot of organizations haven't really recovered from COVID, which means our local arts organizations have already been dealing with instability for a while. In fact, Margo and I talked about all that in October. In that conversation, she ticked off a bunch of affordable and totally free ways that you and I can help create a more stable local arts economy. Everything she said is still very much true today. So as we head into summer, we wanted to reshare her insights. But first, I wanted to set the stakes with her. So I asked, why does it matter for us to support local art here in Seattle?
There are a couple ways I could answer this, and I feel like, my title says Arts Economy Reporter, so I could answer by saying, the arts bring in so much revenue and bring in so much benefit to the economy, and that's true. Or the arts are so good for our mental health and are so good for our social cohesion or whatever. And all those things are true, and I've written this before. It's just like, we just need beauty in our lives. We just need, life is hard and we just need something beautiful to exist. And we just need weirdness and strangeness and wonder to exist. And we can't live with only grayness. And life just needs to be special. And I do really, truly in the deepest of my heart, that art does do that at its best.
So you write about the arts and the economy in Washington State. Do you feel like you're bringing good news to your audience on this beat, or bad news, or a little bit of both?
Unfortunately, I sometimes joke I'm the harbinger of doom a little bit, because it is at least in the last couple of years, it's not been a ton of fun news. There has been some good news, obviously, and I will not totally depress you during this conversation. I promise. I have my sad lamp here on my desk, and I, would recommend you have something to keep you going. No, I'm joking. But overall, it's been a tough couple of years. So overall, there's been some tough news.
I appreciate you saying, you have your sad lamp here and, that you do feel like sometimes you're the harbinger of doom with this beat. But I also know that you've seen some positive things happening with some arts organizations in the region. Generally, what are you seeing that's positive?
A few things I've just seen by being out and about that I just want to highlight. Just being at the Seattle Symphony lately, I saw Rachmaninoff, and they have a new music director.
That's cool. So you got to see the new music director, Shen Zhang, conduct at the symphony.
Yes, and it was incredible. And I had read those articles, that my colleagues had written, and other people that, at the Wall Street Journal had written, where they talk about her charisma and I was like, sure, but how much can that really impact? But she just has an incredible stage presence, and the way she introduces the show, it just really electrifies the performance, and it really made me want to go back. It was I think a full house? I don't know. I didn't count the seats, but there were a lot of people, and there were like a good amount of young people. That gave me a good feeling. And then the art walk has been just, Pioneer Square Art Walk every first Thursday of the month has been just popping off. There's a kind of a younger generation that has really rediscovered it. And it's, I was there, I think it was a month ago or maybe 2 months ago. It was sunny and it was just like fashion forward. And it just was like, I'd never seen this many people at an art walk. It just was kind of blowing my mind. I think I was literally like, oh my God. Like it was literally stunning to me. So anyway, like that was really positive. We do write positive stories. It's not just negative news, because people will sometimes be like, do you ever write positive stories? And it's like, yes, we do, but you got to read them.
Margo, I love hearing you talk about what's happening at the first Thursday Art Walk and at the Symphony with Shen Zhang, the new music director. But I do feel obligated to mention that we've seen some closures recently. The Bellevue Art Museum closed suddenly in 2024. SIF announced they're no longer going to be using the Egyptian Theater. Are these things canaries in the coal mine when it comes to what's happening with local arts organizations?
I would preface this question, or the answer to this question, by saying there is not one arts organization that has not been impacted by the pandemic. And the pandemic is everything that comes with it, right? It's not just people, it's not just being closed. It's the pandemic, inflation, people's, donors shifting donor behavior. It's everything that comes with that. So I'm saying that. We have already seen some closures, and not that many. We have seen some closures and mergers and a lot of changes happening. But I really would not freak out at this moment. Because honestly, on another positive note, yes, the national funding has been scaled back, and the Trump administration has canceled and rescinded a bunch of grants. But for culture / King County has recently instated a pretty big grant program that is pretty transformative for the cultural sector. And that money is starting to flow into cultural organizations. And that should really buttress organizations' budgets right about now. So I would say, let's not freak out quite yet.
I love a takeaway of don't freak out. I just want to acknowledge that's an excellent takeaway.
As someone who's like prone to anxiety, that's what I would want to hear. So I'm like, don't freak out.
Where are we on the freak out meter, Margo?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I'm really glad that you mentioned For Culture, a funding organization in King County, because I've been thinking about kind of what it takes to maintain healthy arts organizations. What are 3 mechanisms, I guess, that you need to sort of maintain healthy arts organizations? Obviously, funding and grants are one of them.
Arts organizations rely on different revenue streams. This sounds boring, but I promise I'll go quick. But they rely on different revenue streams. Grants are one of them, and then they rely on philanthropy. So basically, smaller donors. It doesn't have to be super wealthy people, but it could be wealthy donors or smaller donors like you and I giving potentially maybe $100 a year or something like that to an organization that we like. I don't as a reporter, but someone would. And then it's also ticket revenue. For a lot of nonprofits, that ticket revenue is not mainly the thing that they rely on, and especially now with audiences still not being totally back, it has become just less and less something that they can rely on. So we're seeing the trend has just been that more and more people are having to rely on grants and on philanthropy, which that is just what is interesting right now, is that as philanthropy is shifting, and during COVID, a lot of people were like, well, we have all these other things that are really urgent crises, right? We have the climate crisis. We have, people are hungry. People are just, there's a lot of things that require funding right now, and people shifted priorities away from the cultural sector. And so right now, a lot of philanthropists are getting the ask to contribute, and organizations are relying more on philanthropy. So you can see where the rub is coming from, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
Additionally, just really briefly, I find this really interesting. Additionally, a lot of kind of an older generation of donors is getting older. And is a new generation stepping up to give in the same way that was really part of kind of a culture of giving that may not be the same across the US. That is TBD.
Margo has some practical, affordable tips to help support our local arts economy. That's coming up right after this break.
Support comes from Seattle Rep, presenting the return of The Play That Goes Wrong, back by popular demand this June. This award-winning comedy follows the Cornley Drama Society as their production unravels with missed cues, collapsed scenery, and onstage mishaps. Performances begin June 11th on the Bagley Wright stage. Tickets and information at seattlerep.org.
So I'm glad you mentioned that you don't have to be super wealthy to support local arts organizations, local culture. Aside from giving at a smaller level, what can I do if I'm not super wealthy? What can we do to help?
I have written 2 articles about this, and I am so glad you ask. And anyone who has questions about this, I invite them to email me. I can tailor it to your needs. This is my favorite question. Legitimately, I love it. So,
Margo, we are going to share your email address in our show notes, along with the 2 pieces that you've written covering this. So that's awesome.
Yes, and if you're don't know where to start, and you're I like this, but I don't know where to start, I legitimately love to be I think you'll like this organization. Go check it out. Okay, my first one is, it's kind of so obvious, but it's just show up and don't flake. Go to the art walk, go to a free event, do it, put on your raincoat, and just just do it. And it's I'm telling this to myself too, it's hard. And then there's a lot of free stuff out there. That's a good reminder, vote with your feet kind of, and go. And then if you can, from there, level up, also vote with your dollars, right? Buy a book from a local bookstore, buy a local author, go to a local venue and a local musician. I also like to tell people, tell your friends, recommend art events, post about it on social media. Consider bringing a friend who is maybe less inclined to this particular type of art, or just to go out this way, and whose eyes may be open a little bit, and maybe you'll both come out learning something about the art or each other, kind of.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel that's potentially a fun way to approach it. And then I want to read you this quote by a local storyteller and comedian, Emmett Montgomery, and I just love it so much. And he told me, being an audience member is a form of activism. It is showing up and supporting something you want to exist. And it's beautiful, and I love it.
Okay, so for someone who would love to vote with their feet, as you said, what are a couple of good, maybe beginning free opportunities in Seattle when it comes to arts and culture?
If you're into visual arts, that's what I've written about for a lot of years. So that's where I always first go. First Thursday in Pioneer Square is a good place to start. That's, galleries are actually beyond First Thursday are always free, right? So
Yes.
that is a good recommendation. Museums are also often free. Also check out the library. I think the Seattle Public Library has a way for you to get tickets to most major museums in the area. A lot of theaters are doing pay what you want, pay what you can, according to kind of what you make or what you are able to. You don't have to say what you make, but just it's kind of self-declared. So really look into that. It's smaller community theaters, but also the bigger ones.
Margo, I'm so glad you mentioned Seattle Public Library. That's actually one of the things that I really encourage people to do. If you get a library card and register online with the library, you can get free tickets to places like Seattle Art Museum, the Wing Luke, Mopop, lots of other bigger museums and organizations in town. So as just sort of an entry point, I feel like that's a really great place to start.
I feel it's not well known enough, and it's so incredible.
Oh, and another opportunity, yes, First Thursday in Pioneer Square is a wonderful art walk, but the city of Seattle hosts so many art walks in so many neighborhoods. So if First Thursday doesn't work for you, you can go to the Belltown Art Walk. You can go to art walks in different neighborhoods,
Yes.
Capitol Hill, Ballard, all over the city. Edmonds has an art walk. I mean, so we'll include a link in our show notes to as many of the different art walks in the region as we can. It is not difficult to find one that hopefully works with your schedule. Margo, we've talked about voting with your feet, voting with your dollars in all kinds of ways. Are there any other, I guess, creative hacks you can think of to support local arts organizations?
Yes. So I basically have ways to kind of level it up according to how much time or money you have or are able to spend. So if you have a little bit more disposable income, like ramp it up a little bit, right? If you're already going to a show, to a concert, say, consider buying a t-shirt of the band, buying a drink or food at the venue. And why is that important? Because margins for performers and for venues on tickets are extremely thin. So that will help both the performers and the venue, continuing to exist. So consider that. Other ways that you can help: pay for a friend's ticket or for like a nice birthday present or Christmas present, buy someone a membership to an arts organization or a pottery class for their birthday. And then buying art as a gift. I think it's totally underrated. Around the holidays, there are a lot of craft markets where you can do that without spending, I think people think, buying art is something that is not available to me. But it's like, you don't have to spend $1,000. You don't even have to spend $500. And you can do that at craft markets, but even galleries have prints available, even smaller paintings that really are not that expensive. They have payment plans. They have ways available to make that pretty accessible to folks. And then, but some people don't have much money, but some people have time. And so that's where I want to say that if you have more time than money, or maybe you have both, but you could volunteer your time and help organizations by, maybe it's ushering, maybe you have skills like marketing or IT, and maybe you help in that way. And the last thing that I want to say, and this is self-serving, I think, for both of us, but listen to, read, share, subscribe, support arts journalism. It doesn't have to be the Seattle Times or KUOW, but I mean, it does help.
Margo, I want to circle back to that quote you shared earlier from Emmett Montgomery. The quote said, "Being an audience member is a form of activism. It's showing up and supporting something you want to exist." Why do you love that quote so much?
I feel like sometimes people think of being an audience member as a passive thing, right? You show up and you take it in. But I think he's right. It is an active choice. And I think especially in today's world where we are bombarded with information and we could choose so many things. We could choose to scroll for 5 hours. We could choose to read 10,000 articles. We could choose to watch whatever slop is out there. We could do so many things, and making an active choice to support a local artist in your community and leave the house and pay money and support someone in your community is an active choice and puts an onus on you, and not just as a passive consumer, and makes it more reciprocal and makes it not just a taking, but a, hey, this is something that we're doing together. And I really, really like that.
Margo Vansynghel is the arts economy reporter for the Seattle Times. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, we talked back in October 2025. And since that time, Margo says things have gotten worse for local arts organizations. She says it's not quite what she calls a threat level red, but people have lost their jobs. For example, since she and I last spoke, Teatro Zinzani closed. That was 90 jobs lost. About 100 staffers who used to work at the Crocodile here in Seattle have lost their jobs, and there have been layoffs at the Seattle International Film Festival. About a dozen employees also lost their positions at Fifth Avenue Theater Company. And in more sad news, this summer, the nonprofit arts organization Tacoma Arts Live will close its doors and sell its building, the Tacoma Armory. Margo says these changes are not a reason to truly freak out, but the status of local arts organizations is serious. She says, quote, "That's all the more reason to buy tickets, show up, and support the arts organizations you love." We'll have links to Margo Vansyngel's latest reporting about arts organizations here in the region in our show notes and at KUOW.org, including her story about layoffs and closures and what local artists and art administrators are saying about all this. Thanks for listening to Meet Me Here. Meet Me Here is produced by KUOW, a proud member of the NPR network. It's hosted by Katie Campbell, Dyer Oxley, and me, Jeannie Yandel, and it's produced by Kyle Norris, Brandy Fullwood, and Matt Martin. Phyllis Fletcher is our editor. You can find out more and support the show at KUOW.org/meet. And if you're enjoying Meet Me Here, let us know. Rate and review the show wherever you listen. It really helps. If you have an arts and culture event you want to tell us about, email us at arts@KUOW.org. That's arts@KUOW.org. I'm Jeannie Yandel. See you soon.
Support comes from Seattle Rep, presenting the return of The Play That Goes Wrong, back by popular demand this June. This award-winning comedy follows the Cornley Drama Society as their production unravels with missed cues, collapsed scenery, and onstage mishaps. Performances begin June 11th on the Bagley Wright stage. Tickets and information at seattlerep.org.
Soundside brings you beyond the headlines with news and conversation rooted in the Pacific Northwest. I'm Libby Dankman. Every week I sit down with local journalists for Soundside's Front Page, where we give you a shortcut to understanding the latest news and cultural moments and how they affect us here in the Puget Sound region. It's all here on Soundside, on the radio or streaming Monday through Thursday at noon and 8 p.m. on KUOW, on the KUOW app, or wherever you get your podcasts.